NFL free agency brought to you by RotoWire. In this video, I'll break down the skill position players signed in the first 2 days of the legal tampering period of free agency. I'm Jim Coventry of RotoWire. First, let's start with quarterback position. Sam Darnold goes to the Seattle Seahawks. 3 years, about $100 million. Now, Darnold did have a career year last year with Minnesota, but I said going into last year, Darnold was in a great spot in that Minnesota season. The offensive line was very good. Kevin O'Connell ran the offense, schemed up quick, easy throws. You got Justin Jefferson. He had Jordan Addison. Later in the season, he'd get TJ Hockenson. So Darnold was fine. However, we saw things unravel late. First of all, there were 7 games that Darnold played in Minnesota in which teams were good at bringing pressure. In those games, 6 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Now, on the season, he had 35 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. So as you see, he could feast on bad teams. That said, now Sam Darnold goes to Seattle. Offensive line, they might be average in pass blocking. Nowhere near what he had in Minnesota. The weapons goes from Justin Jefferson and Addison. Well, now all of a sudden, DK Metcalf's gone, Tyler Lockett's gone, and even if he comes back, he's an aging player. He has Jackson Smith and Jigba. Great, one player. This is a bad situation for Darnold. Darnold's going to be under heavy pressure. If that happens, we're going to see the Sam Darnold we saw for most of his career. I am not optimistic about this landing spot. I see him as a low-end quarterback too. We also had a trade at quarterback. Geno Smith goes to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, Geno Smith's 34 years old, obviously a long career. He didn't do much for much of that career, but the last 3 years in Seattle, he revived that career. 2022 was probably his best season, but I want to point this out. In each season since 2022, Smith was good, but his numbers kept going down. Now, his completion percentage was high, and he did put up decent yardage, but his touchdowns kept shrinking, and his interceptions, were kind of going up here. So Geno Smith was in a very good situation. He had good receivers. He had a nice surrounding cast. The line wasn't great, but Geno's okay with dealing with pressure. But now he goes to the Raiders, and we love Brock Bowers. He has Bowers. But his number one receiver is Jacoby Myers, wide receiver, I should say. And you go from that Seattle to here. Geno's not a great quarterback. This is not a good offensive line. This is not a good situation for Geno Smith. And again, I mentioned he was not the same player in 23 and 24 as he was in 2022. So again, I see him as a lower end quarterback too, with limited upside. Justin Fields goes to the New York Jets. 2 years, $40 million. Now, $20 million a year. So obviously that's kind of bridge quarterback money, certainly not starter money, but it's not like low end backup money either. The only way this works for the Jets is if they're going to commit to an RPO, run pass option based offense. Justin Fields struggles to read the entire football field. So what they need to do is they need to get him on the move, him and Breece Hall in the backfield, and then they got to get Garrett Wilson schemed up to get him open in the short area of the field so Fields can make some easy throws, get Garrett Wilson going after the catch. It'll have to be a very condensed offense. But if the Jets turn Justin Fields loose as a runner as he was turned loose in Chicago, not Pittsburgh. When he played a few games in Pittsburgh, they were very safe runs. But in Chicago, remember, Justin Fields ran for 1,100 yards. And we have that level of athleticism. If the Jets unlock that, Fields could be a great fantasy player. Now, here's the thing. If you're drafting Fields in fantasy drafts, draft him as a second quarterback. And if they get him in that run system and he gets taking off, he'll finish as a quarterback one if he runs for that kind of yardage. That's the way the scoring systems work. So you draft him, again, as that secondary option. But if he doesn't hit, then no problem. You move on. You have somebody else. But just be safe of drafting him. Finally, Daniel Jones goes to the Indianapolis Colts, 1 year, $14 million. I normally wouldn't bring up a player like this in a free agency video, but Anthony Richardson doesn't complete half of his passes, can't really run an NFL offense. Daniel Jones, maybe you could say the same, but we had that 1 year with Brian Daboll where everything was schemed up. They had that smoke and mirrors going on, and Jones had a decent season until enough film came out. Well, I think with Shane Steichen, you might be able to see a little bit of smoke and mirrors there. He has Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, say what you want about Alec Pierce, downfield threat. Daniel Jones, if he gets running again, he's had neck injuries, he's had knee injuries, but if they get him running, they get him schemed up, and he does take the starting job, he could be an effective fantasy quarterback. Obviously, you're draft him as a quarterback too. But if he does get running, there's some upside there as well. Let's move to the running back position. Aaron Jones stays with the Minnesota Vikings 2 years, $20 million. I didn't like that Aaron Jones struggled late in the season. Early in the year, he was great. At least 88 rushing yards in 6 of 11 games. And then last 7 games, he only hit 73 yards one time. Now he was dinged up, but that's kind of the way it goes. He's an aging back. He'll be 30. Certainly getting paid $10 million a year. The Vikings believe in him. They already said they're bringing in competition. Look, love Aaron Jones. Draft him around running back 20. If things work out, he might get you to running back 15, but I think he's going to begin to decline a little more than he did the second half of last season, and I think he's going to share more work than usual. There's a way to keep him best, so handle that that way. Najee Harris, Los Angeles Chargers, 1 year, $9 million. Now, remember, Harris was very consistent. Last 3 years, between 1,034 and 1,043 rushing yards, and his yards per carry, 3.8 to 4.1. That's not very good, but it's consistent, right? But he does average 8.5 touchdowns over his 4-year career. Here's the deal. He goes to the Chargers. The Chargers, the interior line isn't great, but they do put extra tight ends or fullback on the field. Greg Roman's power running scheme, they get things going. This is a good spot for Harris. Even though Harris's yards per carry haven't been great, his broken tackle rate and his yards after contact have been very good the last 2 years. Last year, 87th percentile broken tackle rate, 63rd percentile after contact, which is still good. It was better in 2023. So I say this, you draft Najee Harris right after running back 20, but with the volume. And remember, Harris hasn't missed a game in 4 NFL seasons, so he's very durable. And there's a lot to be said for that, the running back position. And again, if he gets that 17 games and he gets that volume, he'll finish better than running back 20. It's just that he's not going to be a week winner week after week, but sometimes having a solid running back, not bad. Finally, Javonte Williams, Dallas Cowboys, 1 year, $3 million. That's backup money. Right now, Dallas doesn't have a lot of competition. We'll see who they bring in. But remember, Javonte Williams, since the knee surgery a couple of years ago, not good. 3.7, 3.6 yards per carry the last 2 years. Broken tackle rate was 36 percentile, decent, but below average. Yards after contact, 26 percentile, not good. So right now, look, if he's the only running back in the backfield, certainly volume could get him to that low end running back too. But if they bring in anybody else, it's going to be hard to see things going well. If you enjoy videos like this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. Also, you can check out all of our fantasy football content and rankings, getting a free 2-day trial, no credit card needed. Head on over to rotowire.com/Jim and check out all of our content. All right, wide receiver Chris Godwin stays with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 3 years, $66 million. We don't like that Liam Cohen's gone, who was the coach last year, and had Godwin ready to have maybe not his career season. He had a 1,300 year yard season in 2019, but he was going to be close to that. But he's healthy, and again, the coaching staff's going to be a little bit different, but Chris Godwin is still a star player. Excited. Draft him as a wide receiver too. Davante Adams goes to the Los Angeles Rams, 2 years, $46 million. He'll be 32 years old, but he was 87th percentile yards after the catch last year. And remember, after the week 13 bye with the Jets, Adams averaged 96 yards, 1 touchdown, and 11 targets. So if he keeps getting targets, he can still perform at a high level. Not the player he was when he was 26, who is, but he's still very effective. And look, he doesn't block. Sean McVay usually makes his receivers block, but he brought in Davante Adams for a reason. He doesn't need him to block. He's got Puka Nacua who'll do that and do some dirty work. Nacua will be the number one, but Davante Adams, just don't overrate him, because Nacua is the number one here. Adams would be your solid wide receiver 2 in fantasy. As long as the draft price is good, you're fine. There was a trade. DK Metcalf goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, Metcalf had a 1,300-yard season in 2020, a long, long time ago, but he's pretty much a 950 to 1,100-yard receiver now. But here's the problem. Goes to Arthur Smith's offense. And the thing will be, George Pickens is there. Both of these players are a little more downfield. They do it a little differently, but that said, it's just very hard to see targets for a receiver in an Arthur Smith offense. Now when you have two guys who are similar, I just don't see one being so much better than the other. So Metcalf may only get 90 targets. And if that's the case, he's a wide receiver 3. Darius Slayton, quick hit, back to the Giants, 3 years, $35 million. They've never used him right. In his best seasons, he had 700 yards. Wish he would have gone elsewhere. That would have been great. DeAndre Hopkins goes to the Ravens, 1 year, $5 million. Very simply put, if the Kansas City Chiefs, who needed help, relegated him out last year, year. There's probably nothing left in the tank. It's a nice name signing. I don't think it makes a difference in fantasy. Dyami Brown, Jacksonville Jaguars, 1 year, $10 million. He did have a great playoff season. In the 3 playoff games, he was averaging 76 yards and 6 targets, 4.6 receptions. Liam Cohen coaches there, so that's what we're going to bank on. You draft Brown outside the top 50 wide receivers, and you hope that Liam Cohen can work his magic. Dyami Brown was very good after the catch. We didn't see his athletic profile coming out of college being that guy. We thought he was like a situational deep threat. So look out. They could use him in that role. So again, outside the top 50, take him as an upside pick. Joshua Palmer, Buffalo Bills, 3 years, $36 million. Look, he couldn't get down to Chargers last year. They really needed him. 13th percentile yards after the catch, 584 yards, and they just could never get him going. I just don't see that changing in Buffalo. Josh Allen last year threw like 100 fewer passes in his career norm because since they brought Joe Brady in to run the offense, there's a more balanced offense in Buffalo. But Josh Palmer at best will be the number 3. That's not going to probably pan out. Tight end only one so far. Juwan Johnson stays with the Saints, 3 years, $30 million. No thanks. Unfortunately, I love Juwan Johnson. He did have 548 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. The problem is the Saints have never made it a priority to get him the football. Had he gone somewhere else, there might have been a chance to see that. Unfortunately, back in New Orleans, low end, tight end 2 with an occasional spike week.